Welcome back. This is a review for Fruits Basket Season 2, Episode 11 or 36. So this is obviously, well, last episode was obviously the official finale for summer break. Not summer break, but for the beach arc. In this episode, Tohru and gang finally go back home. Not to quite end summer off. Summer still is going to go on for maybe another episode. Um, but we get right off the bat, they go home, and of course Ayame's there, house sitting, kind of. kind of. But right off the bat, we get something that I want to talk about, which is that Tohru, unlike in a lot of series where you'll get characters who they'll make a decision, because in last week's episode it was Tohru's, after everything that happened with Akito, Tohru, she kind of says, I want to break the curse. And a lot of animes, you'll get characters who will say something of where it's like, okay, this is the next step that they got to do, and they typically just wait for things to happen or things to come to them, and then they'll start actually working on their said goal of what they're actually going to. But in this episode, we see right from the beginning that Tohru goes and she starts looking for some way to break the curse. So while everyone else is off dealing with Ayame and him and his goofballness, Tohru asks her, oh hey, can I go use the phone? Not telling him what she's using it for. But he says sure, and she goes and she makes a call, which we find out is to Kazuma, and she's like, I want to talk to you. And so we get Tohru right off the bat going, okay, and this is another part that I love about her character, is that she is someone who is very strong-willed, she's very determined, she's very much so a go-getter, and that once she decides she's going to do something, she is going to do it. So she doesn't waste any time at lollygagging or just doing other things. She immediately goes and calls up Kazuma as soon as she can, because she figures that he's probably the best person that would be able to tell her anything that is possible, any possible thing that he can about the curse. He'd probably be the person to tell her about it. So we jump over to their meeting, and Kazuma mentions that he'd been out of town, visiting a friend, but as well as his grandfather's grave. We get the realization here that, well, not real, well, kind of both. We find out that Kazuma's grandfather, who was the previous cat, wasn't buried. It's not like the Soma grave is far away. It's that because he's the cat, he's not allowed to be buried with the other Somas. So that's kind of a sad realization, but at the same time, Kazuma kind of sees it as a positive because it allows him in one form or another to actually have some form of freedom, to actually be outside, to actually be free from everything, and to actually experience the world, which is something what he wants for Kyo. Then Tohru goes, it pretty much tells him that she found out that Kyo's going to be locked up after he graduates, and that pretty much all the others of the Zodiac are going to have to come and live with Akito and never be apart again. That Akito told her all of this, and that she's decided that she wants to break the curse because of this, because she wants them to be able to be free. And Kazuma confirms that this information is true. It wasn't just Akito trying to, rile Tohru up or get under her skin or give her a shock or something like that. It's true. Kyo is going to be, that is a very real and potential future for Kyo and the rest of the Zodiac members after pretty much all of them are graduated and such. And of course Tohru asks them, or of course, and Kazuma's like, well, and I'm it's not a future that I want, it's a future that if it does happen, I will fight, tooth and nail to make sure that Kyo does have some form of freedom, but it is what it is. And so Tohru, she says, can you tell me anything at all that you know about the curse? And he says, well, I don't really know too much about it. I know probably only a little bit more than what you know. It's a curse that, kind of binds them all, and it's something that it's more like a bond, and that the relationship between all of them is, between the Zodiac and Akito, is something that they're in a different world in a way compared to everyone else. The relationship is different compared to everyone else, and it's hard to describe, and it's like an untouchable world. And says, stuff like, despite the fact that Akito's kind of like a child, which is very much so true. Akito is very much so like a child, and that he, just screams hysterically and throws a tantrum. That despite all that, the Zodiac members are very weak to Akito and don't have the strength to be able to resist or disobey Akito's orders and what Akito does and says. Um, and says it's very much so like a bond. And Tohru, thinks to herself, well, a bond is something that it's supposed to be something that's sacred, and she thinks of her mom in this case. It's supposed to be something that's special. It's supposed to be something sacred. It's supposed to be something that is supposed to be precious. And so she thinks of, well, obviously breaking such a thing is definitely going to get me punished, but because I don't want these guys to be hurt, I want these guys to actually have true freedom, I'm going to have to be punished in some way, shape, or form in order to break the curse. And Kazuma's like, oh, I can't really give you any more information than that. I don't really know what else there is to do. I don't really know exactly how you can break the curse. And Toru's like, I understand, just but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try and do it regardless. I'm going to try and break the curse anyway. And Kazuma, I guess he sees Toru, and during this entire conversation, Toru's kind of very somber but serious, and Kazuma thinks to himself, I really wish that you hadn't found out about Kiyo's confinement. But then he's kind of shocked because Toru then kind of switches gears. She goes, okay, she gets out of her serious mode and goes back to her normal self, which is okay. She kind of gets more bubbly and happy and kind of her more optimistic self, and she just starts talking about, oh hey, Kiyo's gotten stronger, or do you think he's gotten stronger? And I think he's gotten taller, and I think his hands have gotten bigger. Do you think he'll be taller than you one day? And Kazuma kind of realizes what it is that Toru probably should just keep doing, and that he says, I think you should just keep smiling for them and just be yourself, because that's what's going to help them the most at this point. And he thinks to himself that because your smile will wind up being, your smile will end up kind of being their strength if they were to be locked up, and even if they weren't, your smile will become their strength so that they can make a new bond. And that's how it kind of ends. And then you get to see as Toru's leaving, she runs into Rin, who kind of tells her, hey, don't involve yourself with the Somas, and that's really all she gets. That's really all she tells her. And then Rin goes and talks to Kazuma. She says, hey, what'd that girl want? And Kazuma says, oh, probably the same thing that you're here. She was asking me probably the same thing that you're going to ask me about. And she's like, I won't let her get involved. That's what Rin says. And so now you kind of know that it's very real possible that Rin is also trying to figure out a way to break the curse. For what reason, we don't know. But now we know that, kind of know what Rin's going after a little bit, and that she also wants to break the curse. So that's kind of the first half of this episode. But the second half, when I'd say kind of the more meatier part of the episode, at least in terms of like character growth, is for both Kiyo and Kagura, and that they kind of go on what you could say they're a final date. A first date? I don't know. But they kind of go on this little date, in a sense. And I like the fact, I'm going to talk about Kiyo first here, and that this episode really has shown Kiyo's growth, and that the last time I think we really saw Kiyo interact with Kagura was during the True Form arc, and it was very briefly. But then over the course, ever since, especially with this episode, we see that Kiyo really has changed, and Kagura in particular points out, saying that, oh, when asking him about, oh, do you still not watch TV? And she points out that, she thinks to herself that, oh, the way he responded to her, which was very calm, and it's like, oh, kind of nonchalant, was very different than how he would have responded to her in the past, and he would have gotten kind of aggressive and defensive about it, and told her, oh, mind your own business. But he's a lot different now. He's very calm. He's a lot more. I can't think of what the fancy word for it is, but he listens more. He's more, and he's less he's less reactive now. He will give reactions, but he's less reactive than he was before. He's a lot more, he listens and he thinks things through, um, and so on. And you see that as well with Kagura's growth, and this episode mainly is about Kagura's growth. In that, and it's just a testament to Natsuki Take's writing, in that you get a character like Kagura, which I'll get into detail in a minute, but who, it's not just she has the Natsuki Take takes these stereotypes of character or the I can't think of the archetypes and whatnot, for characters, and she kind of breaks them down and she changes them and shows that they can be different than what they are, and more so than anything, she really humanizes characters, and not in just like a character just randomly gets development thing, but in a really natural way. She really is able to develop characters so that way it naturally progresses and it feels like they're actually naturally learning and developing as people. And you see that in Kagura, and that and that you kind of knew what her character was at the beginning of the story, like, oh, she's just kind of the clingy kind of 90s early 2000s archetype, where she's the girl that likes the guy but kind of beats up on him a lot. But over time we've seen that she's definitely a little bit more than that. But in this episode in particular, we discover that a lot of these things, a lot of Kagura's actions from the past, are really just her trying to not only just kind of force herself on Kyo, but more so than that, more so than just kind of forcing herself on Kyo, because that's not really the point. The point more is, because it's part of the bigger issue with herself, which she comes down and realizes in the episode, is that she has pitied and looked down on Kyo so much, and she feels bad about it to the point that she wants to hide it, and she wants to, as she grew up, she realized these things, and she didn't like that portion of herself, and so she tried to cover it up by saying that she was in love with him, and that in order to make herself feel better in a lot of ways. And again, it makes the character, because it makes the character really feel human, which again is it's a testament to Natsuki Take's writing. She is an amazing writer. All the characters in Fruits Basket feel human, and so we get their little date thing, and Kagura mentioning that that she takes Kyo to the place where they kind of met as they grew up, and kind of different the place they kind of played at, and she pretty much, Kagura admitting that she had looked down on Kyo, and that she admits that when she was young she was sad by the fact that she was part of the Zodiac, that because of her parents would get in fights a lot, and then her mom would cry, and it made her feel sad. And when she came across Kyo that day, who was just this boy drawing eggs in the sand and couldn't even watch TV and didn't have any friends, she pitied him and she looked down on him, and she thought, well, hey, at least I may have it bad, but I don't have it as bad as he does, at least. And so she became friends with him because of that, because it made her feel better to be able to be like, well, at least I'm not as bad as he is. And then, of course, over time she realized that she didn't, and then she wound up taking his beats from him one time, and seeing his true form, and she ran away from him. And of course, as she mentions, that after that, that's when his mom started keeping him, locking him up inside more often, and not letting him go out and play. But for Kagura, she regretted that moment. Every time she looked back at it, as she later said, when she saw Tohru in the exact same situation where Tohru finds out about the true form, but instead of doing what Kagura did, and that she ran away and she rejected Kyo, and she only thought about the terror and the fear and the emotions that she felt, she saw Tohru, who pushed past all that, what she felt, and went after Kyo because of the pain of which Kyo was in. And Kagura always felt disgusted, not by Tohru, but by herself, and that she wished that she would have been like that. She wished she could have had this pure. She imagined that there was this pure version of her that didn't reject Kyo and that didn't, pity him and look down on him to make herself feel better. And so because of that, she rationalized out that, oh, maybe if I fall in love with him and I get closer with him, and then maybe he falls in love with me and we end up together, and all this, that maybe it'll make me feel better, and that it will wash away the this horrible, these disgusting feelings that I have, of the unclean me, of the me that I hated. And she realized that it didn't. It didn't do those things, but she kind of went with it anyway. Um, and she apologizes to Kyo. She says, I'm sorry. I know I'm terrible. I know everything that I've done was bad, and it was all for my own sake and never for yours, and I'm sorry that I did these things. I'm sorry I felt this way. I know I'm terrible for this. And Kyo says, hey, you shouldn't be apologizing. I don't care if you look down on me or whatever, but more importantly than that, he says, what I wanted to tell you was that I'm never going to fall in love with you. I'm never going to, it's just not possible. Which is also another thing. It goes actually back, this actually links back to Tohru's determination earlier, in that you get Tohru finding about the curse, and she goes right into trying to figure out a way to break it. And then Kyo, realizing he's in love with Tohru, and the first time he gets really in contact with Kagura, he tells her immediately, hey, I'm not in love with you. And it's one of those, it's so good. And that you get these characters who they don't just stumble around and kind of wait for things to happen. They themselves push forward. They themselves, because they're growing, in a lot of ways because they're human, they make things happen. And so Kyo rejects her, and she's like, that's fine, that's whatever. So she's thinking of leaving, and she's like, okay, well, I'm getting hungry, whatever. And she's starting to leave, and Kyo says, hey, listen, despite everything, despite you looking down on me or whatever, I still am grateful that you decided to be my friend, and that you hung out with me, and that you became friends with me. I thank you for that. And Kagura, she kind of stands there, and she realizes that her love may have started out as being false, a false love, and that she, tried to cover it up with pity, and she tried to cover up her pity and her unclean self by saying that she loved him. But eventually, as time grew on, she did fall in love with him. And the thing about it is that, in a way, it's because I don't think Kagura would have ever been able to accept that. If she had never told Kyo what her true intentions were from back, in terms of her pitying him and looking down on him, and her rejecting the cat self, the true form, she probably wouldn't have really ever told Kyo that or I should say, she probably would have never really actually accepted that she actually had actual feelings for him. She wouldn't have been able to accept that. Just like kind of how it takes someone else, just like with Kisa's story, and Yuki saying that it takes someone else to kind of tell you that they love you in order for you to figure it out, but in order for you to start loving yourself. But more so than that, when Yuki says that, you trying to find good things about yourself, and you just, you kind of just think that you're just making stuff up. In a way, that's how Kagura was, in that she forced herself to love Kyo in order to hide the bad things, but she would have never been able to actually accept the fact that, no, she did legitimately actually fall in love with him. And it's through accepting the fact that, yeah, she did think these horrible things, and she did do these horrible things. It's through accepting that she's finally able to accept that, yeah, she did actually fall in love with him. Now, mind you, she also recognizes that because of that, because Kyo's already rejected her, that she's obviously never going to be with him, and so she, at the end, And of course, Kyo accepts that too. You know, she turns around and says, "No, I do love you, Kyo." And she's telling herself, keeps saying, "Believe me, believe me, believe me." And Kyo says, you know, he pulls her in, he hugs her, kind of hugs her. He just kind of puts her head on his chest, and he's like, you know, thank you so much for, you know, being able to actually, you know, say that being able to admit not only all the wrongdoings that you've done, but also to admit that, yeah, you actually legitimately did fall in love with me. And then of course Kagura goes home, and her mom's trying to be like, oh, you know, I feel bad for you, you know, and, you know, you're crying, you're poor girl, and Kagura's like, no, don't pity me. I don't need sympathy right now. This is something that I brought on myself, and it's time that I reflected upon it. And so Kagura goes to her room, and she just, you know, she has time. She's like, you know, the Kyo of the past and the Kyo that, you know, thanked me, I want to keep those. I just want to be able to dwell on them for right now, so that way I can be over and done with this. I just, until the morning dawns, I want to be able to have those versions of Kyo just to me, and then I'll let them go. And it's nice to be able to see such a character like this written, because a lot of times you get characters who, again, are more of archetypes, and they're like, oh, they're just cute anime characters, and they're your waifus or husbandos. But like in Fruits Basket, it's a lot of these characters, and you get the most current example right here, obviously with Kagura, that these characters are broken. They're not only all good characters. They're not only all bad. You get characters who, yeah, they admit that they did things wrong. They admit that they did and said things wrong, and they even admit it to the people that they need to admit it to, and that, you know, they have to move on with their lives, and they're not perfect. And it's so great to see these types of characters. And again, so for me, I know that Kagura, because I'm also Year of the Boar, so Kagura hasn't always been my favorite character, but especially if you just concentrate on the early stuff before you kind of get to this episode. But this is kind of what cements her to be. She's still not one of my favorite characters, but I still like her as a character, because she's willing to admit her faults. She's willing to not only just admit them, but then also confess them to someone else and be like, yeah, you know, these are the things I did wrong to you, and I apologize for those. And it's so refreshing to see that kind of character. Anyway, next episode should, I believe, unless I messed it around, should be the final episode of Summer Vacation. And it's one that should have actually happened earlier in Summer Vacation, but it makes sense. I'll get into that next episode. But it is going to be fun. It's an episode that I've been waiting for a long time, just because of a certain line that I hope they still have this line in it. They should, because it is a hilarious line. Anyway, that's really about it. So, thanks for watching, and bye for now.